Just one second. Okay, guys, so starting with today's session, well, it's a very interesting session that is a development, testing, and UAT in RPA. So I would say this is basically the heart of any RPA session to begin with, because this is obviously the part where your real development of the solution begins and how you are going, how it is being delivered, how it is meeting all the requirements till whatever you have discussed. So even in our previous workshops till now, you might have seen how we are going in different part of selecting a process, maybe doing a proper assessment, and while it has been like selected for our SDLC plan, how we are going to design that process, what documentations we are going to cover. You might have gone through the PDDs, through the solution design documents, as well the STDs, and many more. And after once you have done all of these things, now the real part of the game starts. So that is this particular life cycle that we will be talking about today. Okay, so I will first take you through some of the topics that we are going to cover in today's session. So briefly, I have divided this entire session into 4 segments, I would say. So first, we are going to start with the very basic brief of a project delivery lifecycle roadmap. It will be first revising some of your concepts, because you all might have seen this kind of a slide that I'm going to show you, and you can correlate whatever concepts you have learned till now. And then I will be showing you what else we are going to cover for today's topic. Once we have done that, we will be going into the development life cycle, where we'll be talking majorly about the development of any solution that takes place whenever we are whenever we need to deploy a solution, or we don't need to develop it, right? So what are the basic procedures we follow? What is a role of a business analyst? So we will be talking a lot of things on that front. After that, we have the testing life cycle. So as any solution, it needs to be tested very thoroughly, because without a proper testing, your solution can't be deployed ahead. You can't really get your results. So this is I would say a very important concept that every one of us needs to know. And then at the very end is the real deal, where we sign it, right? Like the UAT. If it is going to be deployed, this is where it gets decided. Like, have your solution met the requirements or not? Are your acceptance criteria in place or not? Can the business accept it and can go ahead with it? So we will be talking about that UAT lifecycle as well. Okay, so these are the topics that we'll be covering, and we will first start with the project delivery lifecycle roadmap. So taking you to the project delivery lifecycle roadmap, I will be just showing you a very small diagram just to revise some of the concepts. Okay, so if you can see my screen, so here I have mapped I would say a very generic diagram, and we all have covered, I think, some parts of this diagram till now. So first we had let's say a process selection phase. Okay, so we may also call it discovery phase in some of the projects that we go by, right? So there are some terminologies you will be hearing differently across different clients. Okay, so they use different terminologies for the same thing. Okay, so if I say a process selection phase or a discovery phase, it's the same thing. So as you might have gone through the day 1 session with Nikhilesh, and also in the day 2 session also, you might have gone through Anurag, whatever Anurag and Shraddha told you about. So this is all about that, how the process selection phase works, how you're doing the requirement gathering and the feasibility assessment. Going forward was the design phase. So in the design phase in day 3, you might have gone through it by Sumit. So Sumit took you around different creation of PDDs, the walkthroughs that happen during the PDD creation, the STD creation, how does happen. So everything related to a design front, okay? Those are basically covered when we come to this phase. Today, we are going to cover whatever is coming after that particular phase. That would be starting from the development, testing, and UAT. And I will be going into very detail into all of these slides when we'll be coming to that front. Okay, so let me just start with what we have next. So first, coming to the development life cycle. Okay, so the very first thing, if you can see from this slide, is how where this development life cycle basically falls. So it obviously falls between your design phase. So once you have, let's say, you got a particular sign off from your solution design. So the business currently, they have accepted whatever solution you have presented to them. Okay, your requirements are in place in your PDDs. You have mentioned the requirements very properly with all the necessaries, maybe screenshots with all the necessary steps. So you have defined everything. So once everything is finalized and is in a proper place, Then we start with the development, okay? And development is obviously I would say a very crucial matter. And for any RPA developer as well as business analyst, it is going to be a very important thing. So coming to the first part, that is, what is the role of a business analyst in a development? Okay, this is a very, I would say it's a misconception. When people come, they think that when development phase begins, BA doesn't have a role, which is very wrong. There are many roles that even a business analyst has in a development, not developing the solution, but whatever is related to developing the solution. Okay, so now I will just tell you some of the examples that even I have faced in my clients. Okay, so when you like work on any app, like on an automation, you are basically interacting with a third-party application. That might be a case, right? It might be direct via maybe doing some clicks on the screen like a human operator does. You are just mimicking those. It also can be via some, I would say, API calls or maybe some backend calls. So like programmatically, you are doing some kind of things, like you are just making few calls, maybe executing some programs to get some data from that application. Now, this is very technical word, I know. So coming to a very layman point of view, you are just interacting with an application. Just think it of like that. But again, to interact with an application, first you need to have proper access. Now, let's say I log into my Gmail account, but my username and password is wrong. Will I be able to see my emails? It is not possible, right? So similarly for a bot, you just imagine like it, like when you are interacting with any application, you need some proper access to be sorted, right? Now, this access, there are various teams in a particular architect, in an infrastructure of a client when you'll be working, or maybe in your own company, even if you're going to work in an RPA project, every application will be having their own team. Okay, so there can be a multiple number of applications. Like the one application might be, you might have heard about Salesforce, one might be maybe a SAP, a Workday. So there are a lot of applications which will have their respective teams. Now, to get the proper application access or credentials, first thing is that you need someone who can connect with the proper person. Now, business analyst, as you know, is a sort of a guy who coordinates between all the people in your team and in the business side, right? So that is the first big place where he comes. So it is like a missing piece of the puzzle where the business analyst will be coming. He will be coming there to first sort all the application accesses, to sort all the credentials that are required for your application, right? So he will be interacting with the business for you, and he will be interacting on your behalf so that whenever you are deploying the bots or you're developing them, right, you get the proper credentials in place. The second thing is, like, also the one thing that happens is, like, you know, the development team, sometime whenever we are developing, there might be some few gaps. Okay, no matter how perfect we create the PDD, in an ideal scenario, you shouldn't have any doubts. But again, it doesn't mean you never have doubts. It can happen, like you might be having few doubts when you read the STD or the PDD maybe. Okay, so whenever like those little doubts come into your mind, okay, like what should be, like what is the right procedure to be followed at this particular point of time? This is where you can connect with the business analyst to get your doubts cleared on, so that the requirements will be in place with whatever you are setting up. Okay, so that is where business analysts come into a picture. The last part would be like whenever you have developed the entire solution. Okay, so your whole code is ready. You are pretty much confident, like, okay, I have done a pretty good job. And yes, I am going to get a pat on my back from the, I would say, the code reviewer team. So code reviewers, so for the code review session, it is more like it is a session where a solution architect, maybe from your team or maybe from the client end, he will be connecting with the developers to see, are everything, like all things in place or not? Have you followed like the proper conventions that are required for coding a solution? Okay, so there might be certain criterias that they follow. There might be certain kind of a regulation, a certain kind of a procedure, a convention that they might follow. So you have to be very much in line with that, because your solution is going to be among all the other solutions. Because whenever we talk about an RPA project, it's just not a single RPA project. Like you will be deploying a single project, but when it is developed, at the end of the day, there will be many such processes, right, which needs to be maintained, which needs to be managed. So it's very important for all of those codes to follow a similar convention. So that is where this code review sessions comes into picture. Okay, so the solution architect, he will be reviewing your code and he will be giving you his comments. If your code is good, you will be going through the next phase. If it's not in a proper convention, he will give you some feedback, like you need to like do some changes. There, the developers need to do those changes and again go for a code review sessions. Now for organizing these sessions, now again, it might be in some organization, it might be a role of a developer himself, but when you have a business analyst, even a BA needs to, conduct those sessions. He will be responsible for even, explaining the solution architect from a functional standpoint. Because we being a developer, we are more likely, we know the technical aspect of it. Sometimes we might not know all the functional aspects, though it is recommended that a developer should also have a very good understanding of the functional part that he's developing, but many times it doesn't happen that way. So that is when business analysts come into picture. They will be helping in that code review session to both the developer as well as the solution architect to get a particular, I would say, a common point where the functional doubts are cleared and they both know that, okay, functionally what should happen next. So coming to the next part, what are the challenges and blockers that are faced during development? So like I told you, the very first thing that BA does is to help developers, right? It is not like BA's role is different, developer role is different. Everything, when we talk about a team, is about teamwork. And that is where BAs will be helping the developers every time. So like I told you, the very first thing was an access issue, where I gave you an example of my Gmail account, right? So those access issues are, if there are those access issues for any external applications, BAs will be solving that. Okay, like they will be helping to coordinate, I would say, with the application team, with the development team, and then they will come into a common ground, and there might be some accesses that might need to be raised. There are multiple, I would say, ticketing platforms like ServiceNow. There is like a Remedy. Okay, so tickets are raised for those accesses, proper approvals are required. So whatever design documents you have done till now, right, like STD, PDD, even they might require to know, like, okay, like what kind of an access you want. Okay, because that sometimes what happens is an application might have might have a wide range of functionalities, but might be some of them are restricted. Okay, so they might give you only certain part of accesses, not the entire access. So for all those things, you need to connect very properly. You need to define your requirement very properly to them. If they feel that, okay, it is justified, then only they are going to give you the access. So to clear all those doubts, to collect all those documents and give it to them, a BA will be coming into place to do that for the developers. Next thing that happens is a solution design changes. Now, this is not a very top topic, I would say, but I will tell you a very real-time scenario. In almost 70% of my projects that I have done till now, this is something that we have found happening a lot. What happens is, like, whenever you're developing a solution, you never develop it on the production system. So like what happens is an application might have the development versions, the testing versions for that production environment. So every time, whenever we do a development, we do it on a non-production environment. Okay, so that might be a dev system or a QA system. Now there, what happens is there might be few changes in your production version and your development version, because you just imagine when there would be also a guy who would have developed that application, right? Now, when he initially would have developed it, maybe some changes might have been there, which were not replicated to the non-production environment. So because it is a very, I would say, a beta stage of an application. So what happens is when we as an RPA developer work into an environment, now when we will be doing our VDD, PDD, whatever we like, whenever we will be creating our process definition document or maybe a solution design document, right? That time we always reference the production system, because we might get access to the production system at the very first go as developers, not on the machines where we are developing the bot, I would say, but there would be a separate access given to you just for your assessment part. So there, the production environment, like the buttons or maybe the text boxes, maybe some elements might seem bit different from what you are seeing in development or testing. So that actually happens a lot. So when these small kind of changes come, you might need to take a different route for testing it. Okay, like you might need to say that, okay, if my environment is dev or QA, I have to go by this route to go through that particular solution. When my environment is production, I might need to take a different route. So some UI changes can impact your solution design and your testing procedure as well. So that is where the business analyst comes into place, so that he will be taking those data from you, like what are the changes, what testing procedures you are going to follow, and accordingly he will convey the same to the process owner, who will be like, for whom you are actually developing the process. Okay, so some approvals might be required if you need to do it that way, on like, okay, we are going to do the testing in this XYZ kind of way. So you need an approval on that. So it always, like, it is sometimes required in many organizations. So there is where the BA will come. The last part is the collection of test data in lower environments and coordinating across the concerned teams. Now, many times what happens, a very biggest challenge that any developer faces is the test data. It is very much likely that you are never going to get a proper test data in lower environments. Though it is an ideal world, in an ideal scenario, it is the job of that particular operation team or that process owner's business team to give you the test data. But if it is not there in the lower environments, right, then we might need to prepare those test data. For that, the business analyst will be coming into place. He will be coordinating with that particular application team and that operations team as well. They will be asking them that, okay, we have these many number of scenarios as per our process definition document, and we need this kind of a test data to automate all those scenarios. So they will be then creating that test data, and the developers can go ahead and develop it. So you can see what the business analysts play a very pivotal role whenever we talk about challenges and blockers in general during this development phase. So without them, development might not go ahead. So they play a very integral part, I would say. Last is the code review sessions. Okay. Now the code review sessions are basically like a meeting that we have where there will be a solution architect, will be a developer, there will be a BA. Now the solution architect, his role is very simple. He will review the solution submitted by the developer. He will provide the feedback, and then he will sign off to formally start the UAT phase. So now you need this sign off on this document called as code review document to properly go into UAT, because if your development is not properly cleared, so it means that you won't be able to start the UAT phase actually. Okay. Now, when I talk about the UAT phase, even some part of your testing phase comes into this. It's not just the UAT phase. We will also be testing our solution first. And when we have done some of our testing part, then we will be going into the UAT phase. We'll like properly start it. Okay. But this is I would say this is a required sign off document that you know. So always remember, you need a sign off on your code reviews before going to UAT. That is how the actual process is there. Next is the developer who has developed that solution in that environment. So what he needs to do is he needs to present his solution to the solution architect, and he will be then getting some feedbacks based on his development. So if he has done a very good development, he might not get any changes, but if he gets any changes, then he is responsible for doing those changes and again coming for a code review call. So it is like an iterative process. Like if my code review is not successful, I again will be starting on those changes. I will be developing the solution, modifying that solution as per the feedback given, and then I will go ahead. And at the end comes the business analyst. Now he is the person who will initiate the code review session. He will coordinate between the solution architect and the developer with necessary inputs from a functional standpoint. So functionally, whatever is required to understand that solution, BA will intervene in between that meeting, and he will be answering to the solution architect, or he will be explaining what roles you want, what is the particular procedure from a functional standpoint, and what kind of a solution the developer has developed with respect to it. Okay, so that is how they do it. Now I will just show you a sample code review document. Okay, just to start ahead. So this is created majorly by a developer. There is not, I won't say it is like a BA specific document, but yeah, an internal review might happen. In the internal review, the BA might give some of his explanation. So these all are like code specific thing. Okay, so whatever, like I'm doing a development, so basically on UiPath, when I'm doing, there might be many workflows, many queues. So those are a bit of a technical part that I won't be covering in this session, but this is a document that you should know how it looks like. So it is like kind of a checklist where for every topic, like there will be different parameters or topics on which the review will be given by the particular solution architect. And he will be also giving some comments. If let's say there is some changes need to be done, he might give it here. So this document is like officially, this is the document that needs to be signed off. Whenever this is finally signed off, it is all good. There is no negative comment. You can go ahead and then you can just start with the rest of the process for testing and UAT. So I would say this is the final step that you have to follow whenever you are going for the development stage. Okay. So we will now move on to the next life cycle, which is again a very interesting life cycle called as the testing life cycle. Now, testing life cycle is one of the very important life cycle, let me tell you, because whatever you have developed till now, right, some part of it needs to be tested. Now, testing also happens in two types of ways, I will tell you. Some part of the testing happens by the developer himself. Some part of the testing will happen by the testing team. Now, when I talk about testing team can be also distributed in many ways. Okay. Sometimes in some clients or organizations, you might find there's a different RPA testing team that is there in place. Okay. So their job would be to test your solutions. Sometimes you might see there is not a dedicated RPA testing team. So there might be guys from the operations or maybe from the business owners team who are basically the users. Okay. So some part of testing even they will be doing. So UAT basically is done by them, but even some part of the testing they can be included in. Okay. So it's not like they are never included. Again, it depends on the hierarchy of that organization, how the proper COE has been structured there, what kind of a procedure they follow. Okay, so like that, everything happens in place. Okay. So now coming to the major thing, that is where the testing life cycle falls. Now this cycle falls somewhere between development phase and the UAT phase. Okay. Now here, the only thing is some of the components might get interchanged a bit, like unit testing you see. Okay. Unit testing is also a part while developing the solution. Okay. But again, unit testing we can also do separately after the code review. Once like my code has been reviewed properly, I might again do a round of unit testing to check that all my solution is proper or not. Because after code review, you actually get your proper kind of a code. Because till this point, I won't say that you have a very proper code with you, because again, some changes might be suggested, right? So that's why what we do is we always perform one set of unit testing always after a code review, just to verify all the things. Okay. And in this unit testing, what it means, okay, what is a unit testing? What is a system integration testing? Do we do some other kind of testing or not? We are going to cover a lot of things in the upcoming slides. Okay. And I will be just showing you how it works one after another. Okay. So let me go to the next slide. So here we will be first talking about the role of a business analyst when it comes to testing. Okay. Now, also a BA, like I told you, he has an integral part. He plays an integral part throughout the STLC phase. Okay. Like you have seen in all the phases till now, a BA is always there, who is working. So similarly in testing also, we require a business analyst to be there so that he can guide us properly. He can initiate a very proper, I would say, a proper following of procedures, a proper following of like internal walkthrough sessions. So we will be talking a lot about those points. Okay. Now coming to the very first point. The role of a BA is first to connect with the testing team to initiate the testing phase, okay, by conducting internal walkthrough sessions. Now, just imagine I am a developer, or maybe you are a developer. We developed a solution together. Okay, now there are some X number of people who are from the testing team. Now, the problem that happens is like the testing team till now only has seen the VDD. Okay, they might be looking over the VDD, like a PDD, or they might not be looking over the PDD solution. Okay, so when we talk about the PDD, that is the process definition document, right? There will be some requirements that will be written there. Okay, now those requirements, what the testing, like what happens is many a times when you give someone a document, okay, it is their job to go through that document. But again, there might be some disconnect, even just looking by the screenshots. Okay, there is always, like I can't say just reading a document, you might get a very proper idea. So what happens is we actually, after completing the development phase, we do a walkthrough kind of a session where we will be doing a small bot demo maybe, and we will be showing them through the various steps that the bot is going to perform. Okay, it might not cover end-to-end scenario. It might only cover, let's say your process has 10 to 20 scenarios. You might only cover 5 of the scenarios. Okay, if in your, let's say in your happy path, only 5 scenarios come, you will be only mentioning those 5 scenarios. Okay, but this is the role, like you have to first show them what is the exact thing the bot does in a negative scenario, what is the thing the bot does in a positive scenario. So I will give you one example. I might have a process where I go log into a application. When I log into that application, I might extract some data from that application, and at the end I might store all of those data in an Excel sheet. Now this is a very happy path kind of a scenario. Okay, now when, let's say, while accessing that application or while maybe writing that Excel file, some error occurred, right? So that will be a negative scenario. So first you need to, when you're going into a testing phase, you first need to know what is a positive scenario, what is a negative scenario. If there's a negative scenario, how I am recovering from it. Okay, like am I sending an email? Am I notifying the proper team the concerned team, like, okay, this error has happened, so you need to take some actions manually, because every team will be having a SLA or a turnaround, like a TAT is like a turnaround time. So they have to they have like a specific number of days under which that process needs to be completed anyhow. So if your bot, let's say, is taking quite number of days and it's not able to, properly do that process as of now, then how you are going to manage that? Okay, so there might be maybe some manual procedure might need to be take place, okay, so that you do not actually cross your expected time, because this is ultimately a deliverable, right? So all those things we discuss in this walkthrough session, and we tell them about whatever scenarios we face and how we are handling it. Okay. After that, a BA is also responsible for internally reviewing the unit test cases and the system integration testing results. So system integration testing we call as in short form as SIT. Okay. Now SIT result or the unit testing results need to be internally reviewed with the development team, because development team, what they will be doing is whenever we will be running the bot, okay, like as a developer, we will be taking multiple screenshots. Okay. We will be having one Excel file with various columns maybe. Okay. So we can say that for this scenario, what the bot did. So we might get an email, like I told you, in a happy pass scenario, in the use case that I gave you, what I was speaking about is there might be an output report that got generated in case of a happy path. Also, we might send that output report via an email. That might be an additional step. So here I can, in my unit testing cases, I can write one test case like, okay, login into application. If that is successful, I might paste a screenshot of the bot logging into the application. If let's say I have a unit test case saying that the email got sent properly, so what I can do is I can attach that email directly in that Excel file or maybe whatever file I'm creating. So I will be showing you some templates that we create for our testing results that we share ultimately with the business team. Ultimately, when the business analyst has reviewed all the unit test cases and SIT results, he will be reviewing the final version of the exception matrix. Now, exception matrix is a very important document. Now, it might be a separate document or it might be a part of your PDD, that is the process definition document. So what is the meaning of exception matrix? Exception matrix means a list of all the possible exceptions that can occur in your process. Okay. Like whenever I'm developing a process, there might be like 10 number of exceptions that I note. Okay. So what happens is sometimes, like I told you, we always see whenever we are doing any assessment or whenever we are actually doing a design, like when we're deciding on a design of a solution, we come across 10 to 20 exceptions. Okay. But it might happen like during the development phase, you might find some more unknown exceptions. Obviously, your ratio should not be like 30% I identified, let's say in the beginning, and 70% I'm doing at the development. That means that you have not done your design analysis and your process analysis properly. But if you are, let's say, doing 80%, you have already identified 80% of exception in your design phase itself. And only 20%, maybe you are like seeing some unknown exceptions coming that you are handling additionally in your development. That is okay. Because it means that, okay, some unknown scenarios are always there, which you might not cover initially. Okay. So we always review that finalized version of that exception matrix. So we will keep noting down what exceptions we face, what is the kind of a reference protocol. So after like that exception happened, what kind of a protocol do we need to follow? So the protocol means a set of rules. Do I need to continue with that particular process, or do I need to stop that process and send an email? So all those things you have to decide, and you have to maintain that kind of a list. Okay. Now, like I said, it can be a different list or it can be a part of your PDD as well. So it differs from organization to organization. So they have different kind of scenarios, different kind of templates, what they follow. Okay. So it is ultimately followed as per their standard, what they will be following. Okay. Now coming to the next part is an internal walkthrough with the testing team. A very important session where you will be asked questions on the solutions. Okay, so the testers, they will be asking the questions on the solution developed, and they will be gaining some insight for like what kind of a testing procedure they need to follow, what scenarios they need to cover. Okay, so on all those fronts, they will be asking that question. And from a technical standpoint, they can ask that question to a developer. From a functional standpoint, a BA will be coming into the picture. He will be telling them that, okay, from a functional standpoint, this is the particular protocol that we are following. Okay, like why this thing is happening. Okay, so BA here will be having some kind of a domain knowledge. So related to that domain, he will be explaining why this technical, like this particular kind of a recovery we are doing from a technical point. Okay, so that kind of a thing analysis BA gives you from a functional standpoint. Okay, so that is what happens in this kind of a session. So it's a very interactive session. It's a very, I would say, a grilling session for all of the developers, testers, and business analysts in a very positive way, obviously, so that we can know more about the process. Even if something is missed, it can get identified even at this particular phase. Okay, so just remember one thing, your PDD and your STD till this point are like finalized, but there always can be amendments made to it based on some extra scenarios or maybe some extra things. So always at the end of a process, maybe when you are deploying it to the production, you get a finalized version. Okay, so whenever we take a sign off, we take a sign off on what we feel is finalized till that point. But there can be minute changes that always happen, keep on happening, and you can update your PDD like that. But again, you have, whenever you're making any changes, whenever you're making any kind of new, like you're introducing any new scenarios, always remember to get an approval on your PDD and SDD, and then only you start doing the modification. Never start doing any modification from a functional standpoint without getting an approval. And Nikhilesh also has repeated it a lot of times in his first session, that always take an approval no matter what in your PDD. Okay, so that is what even I would iterate at this point. So again, now coming to the next part is a very important thing. We need to understand what is a test scenario and what is a test case. So test scenarios are basically like our high level classifications, okay, so of derived from the use case requirements. So in a test case scenario, it can be a very simple scenario, like the bot needs to log in into an application. It can be a test scenario. Now test cases is like how we are going to test it. So here we can write that, okay, the bot actually went ahead and it entered the right credential. So that can be one test case. One test case can be it inputted the wrong credential and it tried to like reattempt that particular part. That can be a second test case. So scenarios are basically on a very high level. Test cases are basically on a very low level. So scenarios will tell you what exactly we need to test. Test case will tell you how we need to test it. Okay. And being a very good tester means that you need to know all the scenarios, you need to know the reasoning behind it, and you need to derive the test cases as well if they are not there. So that is a very important thing. So having a test scenario is a less time consuming task, but preparing a test case requires more time. You have to do a lot of analysis. You have to dwell deep into that. Like in that scenarios, how many kinds of cases can come? Okay. So that is the thing. The test scenarios are more like about discussing and thinking details, whereas test cases are more about documenting those results. Okay. Like within that scenario, what X number of cases I can get. So it is something like, so I can say test case is a subset of a test scenario, and that you will be looking forward when we create the documents. Now coming to the next part, that is the creation of unit testing and system integration testing documents. These documents are very important in any phase, and they are prepared usually by the developer on any module or component testing level. Okay, so unit testing basically is usually prepared by a developer on a module or a component testing level. Okay. Whereas your system integration testing document is also prepared by a developer. Now here, there can also be a tester involved when you are talking about SIT. But again, it depends on what kind of like the protocol that organization is following. So in some of my projects, I will give you an example. In one Australian-based project that I was working on, okay, we had a separate testing team. So they used to work with us while preparing this SIT document. But in the rest of the clients that I have worked, we have only developed the entire solution by ourselves. So we didn't have any other testing team as such to create this SIT document. So that is why it's not a very generic thing. Like I told you, there can be minute differences, but on a fundamental concept is same for all of them. Like what is fundamentally needs to be documented. That is what that is same. But the people, they always change as per the organization rules and the protocols that they follow. Now, when we come to unit testing document, this document is usually maintained parallelly while developing the solution. So when I'm creating a solution module wise, like in my scenario that I gave you, I have to log in into a solution. That can be a separate module. I have to extract data from that solution, can be a module number 2. I have to after that, write that data into an Excel file. That can be module number 3. And at the end, I have to, let's say, send a notification. Maybe an error notification, that can be a module number 4. Sending a positive notification can be a module number 5. So like that, I divide my solution into modules. And on a modular level, when I do the testing, That is called as a unit testing. So I am testing everything bit by bit, and I am seeing. So here what happens, your bugs will be identified very quickly. Like when you're testing a module, at that point only you will be identifying it and you'll be doing that fix. Okay. So that kind of a documentation we prepare. Okay. And when we have fixed everything, we take the screenshots, we put the evidences so that we can get a proper sign off. Now on these documents also, you need a sign off. Again, the level of sign off also depends. Okay. So many a times what happens, the testing team can give you a sign off directly on unit testing and SIT. But it might have also happen, like in some cases, the process owner himself will be providing you this sign off. Okay. Now this sign off also will be depending on that part. Okay. So this sign off, just remember, it can be either by your process owners or it can be either by your testing team. So it really depends on which team will be handling that part. Okay. When we'll be coming to UAT, there is only one particular sign off that needs to be done, and we will be talking more on that when we'll come to UAT. But from a testing point, like when you talk about unit testing and SIT, the sign-offs can be divided. Like it can be either from, it can be even like you need a sign-off on both levels. Even that is a scenario. Now, let me come to one of the template to show you how we create such kind of a scenario document. So when I come to the scenario document, we have a cover page at the very beginning. Here we write the author, the process owner name, the risk team if there is any, the process COE, okay, which people are from the COE. So we create a cover page kind of a thing. That is a generic cover page, and every organization will have their own format again. So this is one of the samples that I have taken for you all, like to showcase you all. So this is how the cover page looks like. So at first there can be a test case approval, there can be a test record approval. Basically here the process ID, the document ID. So what happens is like also in the next session, you will be learning more about it. Deepak will be taking the session and he will be talking more on the agile part. So there we can create different Jira numbers. Okay, we can have different user stories. So all that concept will be discussed tomorrow. But I'm telling you, like all those IDs that you will be maintaining, right? You can mention it on this particular document. So you need to mention it so that we can map like, okay, for which particular part we are testing this. Okay. So for that, you need to mention all these parameters. So I will just tell you that there are some test scenario documents that we also have. There are some test cases that we have. So we map it like under which scenario, which case we will be having. Okay. Similarly, for unit testing, we will be having some we have this template where we'll be mentioning the scenario ID, what is the expected result, like what we expected, what the bot did actually, and was it a pass or fail? And then we'll give the tester name and the evidence item number as well. So here you might have some screenshots that you might attach. Okay. So like that, we will be going for unit testing. For system testing also, we do it like that. Like what is the test ID for that SIT and what kind of scenarios we have done. Again, what was the statement to check that, what is the expected result, observed result, like that will be following. Okay. Now here you might also map your Jira or your feature, whatever you have. Okay. And similarly, we also have an evidence sheet. So you can paste your screenshots for every testing document that you're creating. So now let me come to the the next part. Okay. So here we are coming to the finalization of exception matrix. So exception matrix, like I told you, it is like a document which has all the exceptions with us. Okay. So all these exceptions will be like, they will be having acceptance criteria. Okay. So like at what particular part, which exception came, what kind of exception came. Okay. All this part needs to be signed off by the process owner. I will be showing you one small document. So here is what we have as an exception matrix. We will have some exception ID, we will have some exception description. The type of the exception is a system exception or a business exception, the severity. If there's a user story in your agile board, you can map it also. At what particular phase we recognize it. So those things will be covered under this part. Okay, so this is how it goes. Coming to the, this is what the exception matrix is, and it's very crucial for your UAT. Let me tell you, you need it to be signed off. You need it to be proper in accordance to your UAT phase to start. Now coming is the next is the UAT phase. So in the UAT phase, this comes actually between your testing phase and your hypercare phase. So in that one, we will be deploying the bot to a new testing environment. That is the very first part. We'll be preparing the UAT results. We will be doing some performance testing and we will get some feedback. It can be either positive or negative. Okay. So we'll be talking what will happen in both the scenarios. So here there will be a lot of roles that the BA will be doing. He will be confirming first the UAT result internally. Like, is it in accordance or not? Okay. So there is a UAT demo call that happens. so with the business owner. So your sign off in UAT will only come from your process owner, that is from business. Okay, so here you will be getting that sign off and those validations will be happening. Okay, so they will be like, we'll be internally validating the UAT results. After that, in case any changes will be recommended in your UAT solution, right, if it's not under the scope of the solution, the BA will verify in PDD what was confirmed initially. If there is like a lot of changes which is required very urgently, then again the entire solutioning will start. Like you will again do the modification in the PDD, will again do the development, again the same unit testing will come, again this UAT cycle will begin, like from like you will have a UAT demo at the end to show that. The next role is that you the next part is that also the BA will also organize the UAT demo between the development team, the testing team, and the concerned stakeholders and the process owners. Now, like I told you, process owners need to put a particular sign off on this document. So this UAT demo, you'll be showing them the test results, the bot demo also you'll be showing, and you will be then like they will be asking you some questions. They will be asking some questions to the testing team. Everything needs to be answered. And BA will be the person who will be conducting the entire call, and he will be one who will be intervening in between to explain why this solution has come into place. Okay. The next time is like, the next thing is that he will also review the performance testing result so that we can decide on a scheduled time. Like if your bot is running for 2 hours and if it is on a shared VDI, right? What kind of schedule time you need to perform. Okay, so like there will be many bots that will be running at one time in that production machine. So you need to first determine like for what number of cases, what is the time that you are getting. So performance testing will come into place at that particular point. After that is like all the documents needs to be signed off in the UAT phase for the deployment of the solution in your production. So that needs to be ensured, like whatever design documents you have developed, even with the UAT or the testing scenario document, those things needs to be in place. Okay, that is the part. So here you will be seeing the deployment request will be raised once we have the code review call. So once the deployment request has been raised, your bot will be deployed to the new region, new environment. There we perform two kinds of testing. Now remember this, these two testing are very important: smoke testing and sanity testing. Smoke testing is something where we first, for the very first time, whenever we have made any changes, we will be testing, okay, is everything working or not as per this scenario? If yes, it is well and good. Okay, so it is like in the smoke testing, we check the crucial part. Next is a sanity testing, where we will be checking a particular function of the bot is working or not. If that is well, then also we are good. Also, apart from this, we have a regression testing. Now, regression testing is like if you are making any modification. So just remember this very clearly, regression is very important. Whenever you're modifying any code, and again, you are testing it multiple times on those scenarios, that is called as a regression testing. Okay, so any changes made to the source code, and if you're testing it, it is a regression testing. Once all the testing procedures are carried off, UAT is performed based on the acceptance criteria, and you will be preparing a UAT result. So I will quickly show you how a UAT document looks like. So this is how the UAT is like. So you will have an acceptance criteria that will be linked to every user story that you will have, like, or maybe on an agile way, or this acceptance criteria will be mentioned in your VDD. So this will be like the bot should log into the application, extract the data and send an email. That might be one scenario. So for that, what was the observed result? You will say, what is the passing or the failing criteria you will mention, who tested it, the evidence number. Okay, so if your evidences are not here, you might have it on a shared drive location. You can also mention that here. So similarly for UAT, you will be having a particular document where you'll be mentioning everything, okay, with time. So that is what a UAT is all about. Now coming to the next part, that is the performance testing at a bot frequency determination. It's a very important concept. Performance testing is done for various scenarios to calculate the time the bot is taking, how much time it will take in various scenarios. We calculate the average bot run so as to determine, okay, this bot is going to be scheduled for 24 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, how much. So it is a very important testing, I would say. It gives you an overall idea how much time the bot takes, okay? And accordingly, in the production machines will be allocated if there are multiple robots running there, okay? So you have to prepare this document also. So this document sometimes is prepared formally. Sometimes we do an informal kind of a result, like we could create an informal kind of a document as well. But it needs to be recorded somewhere in the VDD, okay, if you are doing it that way. This is how the performance testing happens. So I will write how many number of times I tested it, what was the data volume, what is the remark, like how many cases I ran, how much time it took. Okay. And like that, I can also give some remarks. Like in this run, the slowness of browser was there. So like that, I will be having multiple cases, and I can take an average and I can just calculate that exact part. Okay. Like how much time it takes. So once that is happening, okay, you have done everything. The last is the demo calls. Okay. So UAT demo feedback. So this is how a UAT demo looks like. You will have a process owner, you will have a BA, you will have a developer. Other stakeholders can be there from IT, from risk analysis team. You will have a tester as well. So process owner will be basically asking the questions. He will be one who will be giving you the sign off. So he is the most important person. BA will be giving all the critical explanation from a functional standpoint. Okay. That are the part of the demo. A developer will be going from a technical standpoint, and he will be answering the questions. Testers will be talking about the UAT results that they have prepared. They will be justifying why we have marked it as a pass or a fail. And other stakeholders can also put their feedback if it is, impacting their IT systems in some way or their risk systems in some way. So that is how it will be done. Okay. So once everything is done, we simply just go ahead and we might create an issue log. So issue log is like if you have, let's say, some errors that have happened. Okay. So in your issue log document, you might note all the issues that are there, and you can give it back to the development team. So the BA will be also reviewing, like, okay, what are the bugs that were found? Are they in accordance to the PDD or not? If yes, the development team will do the necessary modification. They will do the regression testing. Since they have made changes to their code, they have to test it again and again before performing the next round of UAT. So I will just show you a issue log template. So this is how a issue log is like. When the issue came, what is the ID? What is the name of the activity? At which environment it came? What is the description? How to reproduce that issue? What is the expected result, and what was the actual result? The severity they can give who identified it. Okay. So there will be they will be mentioning all the list of the issues that they find in the UAT. So when this thing happens, everything will now go in an iterative mode. Everything will start from, if it's a major functional change, you will make modification to your PDD. Then you will again redevelop the solution. You will do the code review. You will do the testing. You will do the next round of UAT. So it will all happen again. So this is like an iterative approach in which it happens. So yeah, that is all I had for this session. Sorry, I ran a bit late in time. Over to you, Nikhilesh. Yeah. For testing, yeah, whenever you're doing any kind of a testing, okay, just remember one thing. Your testing understanding depends on how well you understand the business. Okay, how well you understand the functional points. Okay, that is what is very important. And you need to also know that whenever any technical bugs or any technical issues are there, okay, a particular process needs to be followed. This scenario template that we were talking about, okay, that we had the test scenario template. Now you see in one template only I'm maintaining my unit testing result, my SIT results, my UAT results, right? In none, I will tell you, it depends on the organization and the client again. They can have different documents for different kind of testings, or they can have everything included in just one testing document only. The major thing is whatever testing documents you are creating, there should be a standard to it. You need to mention the test IDs, the date, like what is the testing that you are doing, what is expected out of it, what is observed, right? These are like a fundamental things, how you are going to mark it as a pass or fail. Okay. And then there is like what evidence number you are going to use. Okay. And when you are doing unit testing, like I told you, it is on a modular level. When you are doing a system integration testing, it is basically on a component level. Like when I say system integration testing, it might be like I have integrated maybe like I've been logging into an application, extracting the data out of it, right? Then logging off that application. That can be one entire module that you can like create as an integrated module. Okay, so you can do your system integration testing on that way. Even in SITs, we can cover an entire scenario as well, where we can say that, okay, one positive scenario where the bot basically does this X number of steps and produces an output. That can be one scenario that will be mentioning. You can also mention it in a negative scenario basis. If you have multiple X number of negative scenarios, you can mention it in that way. Like what was the statement that you needed to check? Again, what is the expected result, the actual result, and the screenshots are the evidences that are very important part of any testing document. So all these things you need to have properly maintained. And again, at the UAT level, when you create everything, you need a proper sign off on this document from the process owner. Okay. From a testing point, you can do multiple testing, like smoke testing, where you are like testing the critical components, the sanity testing, where you are just testing the functionality, Or you can do regression testing where you are just again and again testing the same set of codes when you have done any modification to your source code. So those are the major crux of testing. Okay. Yeah, Nikhilesh, I think, yes, we can.
So guys, I'm going to, everybody is in Menti. So let me introduce the question. So what is the question for today is, who prepares the unit testing document? Who prepares the unit testing document? The options is, so there are 4 options. You can write who prepares the unit testing document. There are 4 options. Even I have increased the time limit for you. So please give the right answer. Who prepares the unit testing document? So time's up. Okay. Okay. The correct answer is RPA developer. Okay. So most of you given the correct answer. Thank you. So next we will go to next question. Question number 2. What stages of testing ensures correct working of changes source codes? What stage of testing ensures correct working of changed source codes? So there are again 4 options. Please give a correct answer. Today you might be a winner. Last seconds. Okay. Okay. 50% gave correct answer, 50% gave the wrong answer. But the answer is regression testing. So are you guys ready, excited for the results? So let's go to the leaderboard. We'll see. So we have today the winner is Vihita and Akshay. So both are done for Akshay and Vihita. Thank you so much, Akshay and Vihita. So you are being the winner.